worldwide transmission. Gotta love it. Mainstream media. Government cover-ups. You want answers? Well, so does he.
Live from Austin, Texas, broadcasting worldwide.
It's the pot-bellied Teletubby, Alex Jones. Yeah! I've been watching. Yeah, we're live, ladies and gentlemen. Live on Friday evening, taping this. Yeah, it's a retransmission coming up, but this is fresh, never before heard info. Very important rebroadcast. Sometimes when I have a week that's so powerful, I've got to do a rebroadcast on Sunday or a clip show because it's so important. But I will be listening with you today through the entire 2 hours of Hillbilly Magic. Again, thank you for tuning in. It is June 17th, 2012, year of our Lord. That makes Madeline Marie O'Hare very angry from her Hades pit. And we are going to be here for the next 2 hours. Listen, I get really creeped out by stories like what's coming up after a couple segments with Lou Rockwell on Rand Paul, the New World Order, and more. We're going to premiere here on the radio, because I only played part of this Friday, ran out of time. Aaron Dykes and others on the street in Austin talking about the secret nuclear reactor under UT. Yes, I know that you can find a few news articles from the 80s and that UT quietly admits it's going on, but it might as well be a secret because everyone I talked to when I first covered this on Thursday and then Friday, I was getting emails, calls saying it doesn't exist. And then once I posted links to it existing, and they're like, okay, well, then so what? That's not the whole point of this story. That's a small part. This all started last Wednesday when a railgun, a Department of Defense run, cyclotron, superconducting super collider weapon system blew up in Leander outside Austin, Texas, and a car a half-mile away got hit by shrapnel and it blew it up. But the Defense Department says everything's fine. The Army's running around out there with trucks and things, so everything's fine. After all, these are nice people. I mean, they just nerve gas their own troops to death and test chemical and biologicals on them. So I say, you know what, I'm sick of this. Go show the secret projects they've got. The bioweapons labs, I told them where that was at. My crew out in Bastrop with the monkey lab and the ape lab. I said, go out to that cyclotron railgun. And I said, go show where the old reactor is still running, because it takes 40 years to even begin to turn it off. Go out and show that, and then go out and show the new one out at J.J. Pickle Center. They got a little reactor and a big one, big experimental facility. And one of our crew members, CJ, he says, well, Alex, my grandfather was the head of all of the maintenance, you know, all of the facilities at University of Texas at Austin. And there's this thing out on Redbud Trail. I never went there, but he says, you go over this hill, here's the spot. And they walled it up in these underground caves. And I was like, wait, that's where they've walled it up all over the country. Universities got caught doing this in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. You got to be kidding me, because back in the old day, they didn't get some place out in New Mexico in the desert. They would do it locally out in a field or in a warehouse. They dig into the floor and cover it up. You know, these secret dump sites, I said, get out there. And sure enough, it's all walled off, the caves, the rest of it. It's a state preserve right by the dam. It's got LBJ written all over it. Very credible info. That's the point. We're saying there could be a dump. Our sources say there is. There, hidden in these big limestone cave formations that they admit are there. And so that's the big story. That's the big report that's up at Infowars.com. You want to share the audio, you'll see the video. It's also on our big YouTube channel. Breaking massive nuclear secrets uncovered in Austin, Texas. That's what we're covering. And people have exposed stuff like this before and been murdered, been killed. I mean, I was looking into this after we broke this story of all the cases of people in Colorado and New York and New Jersey and Texas and you name it that report on secret dumps and get killed. And we can't even get the public to realize, first they say there's not reactors, then they say, okay, they're there, what's the big secret? That's not the point. There's railguns, bioweapons, reactors, and reported secret dumps. That's coming up. We have a lot of massive news coming up today. You know, a drone crashed a few days ago in Maryland. Now they're reporting that all over the country, but also the big report is, again, out of Fox News on the East Coast. People think it's UFOs now as Pentagon drones fly over the highways. They think it's aliens. Kind of like the big surveillance blimps I've seen ABC News say, it must be an alien. And it's a big blimp with no markings on it with propellers and cameras hanging off the bottom. Because government wouldn't be spying on you with big blimps. No, it must actually be E.T., visiting for Reese's Pieces or something. I mean, it's truly over-the-top, ridiculous that stuff like this is going on. We're going to be breaking that down. We're also researching right now the nuclear reactors. There's 3 of them in Austin. There's almost no news coverage of this, and a big story we're working on of where they've been dumping the waste. We're also going to be getting into the bizarre White House reaction to John Bryson's 3 hit-and-runs. Well, 2 hit-and-runs on one group and then another hit-and-run. A lot of bizarre behavior on that front. We're going to look at the ongoing meltdown in Europe and the incredible announcements that they're going to restrict ATM withdrawals and impose border checks. So people can come into the euro, but when you try to leave, they're going to impose capital controls. TSA is already doing this, trying to take people's silver and gold, asking about wedding rings. This is in the news, downloading what's on your laptop computers. Everything we've seen in third world dictatorships or Nazi Germany. It's amazing. Now, in a moment, we're going to a man who needs no introduction, Lew Rockwell of LewRockwell.com, head of the Austrian School of Economics group, the von Mises Institute. Just an amazing intellectual mind when it comes to research. Former Chief of Staff for Ron Paul, a great patriot. I want to get him on to look at everything happening in the world, the big news issues, the wars, the euro, the banker bailouts, and obviously out of the gates, get his take on Rand Paul's endorsement of Mitt Romney and why that's created such a firestorm, and get his view on it. But before we do that, I wanted to play just about a minute clip of Ron Paul. And I think Ron Paul, when thinking if he should endorse Romney or not, and Tom Woods has talked about how dangerous that would be. I had the guy that Ron Paul endorsed 4 years ago, the head of the Constitution Party at the time, that candidate. I had him on last night, Chuck Baldwin, to discuss it, and he said, really bad move. Again, Rand can do what he wants, still a great guy. He's fighting drones and the police state and all this other stuff. But if Ron Paul does that, wow, it would be like a nuclear bomb going off, in the words of Chuck Baldwin. I agree. So I want to get the inside intel, if he's been talking to Ron on what's happening, where all this is going in a moment. But first, here is a short clip of Ron Paul when he was conceding that he was going to drop out in 2008, when he talked about endorsing the Constitution Party. Here he is explaining why, when the McCain people called him, he didn't take, even their respectful call, he didn't take their pleas to endorse McCain as a lesser of two evils, and he explains why. The full clip is up at Infowars.com. The headline on the video is Ron Paul should listen. Ron Paul of 2012 should listen to Ron Paul of 2008. Here is a clip of that CNN press conference.
The majority of the American people, even the recent polling shows that 60% of the American people are unhappy with their choices. If you take the total number of Americans and the percentage that register, and then the percentage that vote, and then the percentage that vote for a candidate, you end up electing a president with 32% of the American people. And because they have been more or less conditioned to believe, well, the two candidates are different, and we have to vote for the lesser of two evils, they end up voting, half the people who vote for the president are voting for the lesser of two evils. And so therefore, 16% of the American people essentially are saying, hey, I like this candidate, and they vote for the president. You know, yesterday, I had a phone call, the first phone call that I personally received or had received from anybody in the McCain candidacy, in his campaign. They called, and it was a bit of a surprise to me because their request was that I endorse John McCain today. And I said, well, I don't like the idea of getting about 2 or 3 million people angry at me. So, but they were serious, and it was a respectful call, and the argument was, he would do a little less harm than the other candidate. And, you know, we just don't need to do that anymore. You know, in I believe it was 1988.
Okay, that's enough.
And I believe
he goes on for 7 more minutes explaining why in a down-to-earth, common-sense fashion. So this is why there was horror at Rand. We're not saying Rand's bad. But then some of the campaign-type operatives, people that admit they don't want Campaign for Liberty being involved in foreign affairs or being against foreign intervention. Well, that's the heart of what makes Ron Paul so good, is that when everybody's laughing at him and they have an audience set to attack him, and they say, aren't you for the wars? And Giuliani goes after him. He says, no, I'm not. That's what's so great about Ron Paul. So Rand starts going for sanctions, something his dad says is an act of war. We turn and look the other way because Rand overall is good. Then he does this endorsement. I understand that Rand is not Ron, but the machinery of Campaign for Liberty is behind Rand and going with the Rand brand. So we are saying, as the people that brought them to the party, because Ron Paul's such an amazing person, and people like Lew Rockwell as well, they're helping him for decades, 30, 40 years, that we're allowed to say, hey, we don't like the direction things are starting to go in. I saw an editorial put up by one of their folks saying, you know, that we're dumb and that we need to learn 2 things to grow up. No, I have grown up politically, okay? Now, joining us is somebody who grew up a long time ago, and that's Lew Rockwell, LewRockwell.com. Thank you for sitting while I went over that video. Lew, what is your take on all of this and the firestorm that has been created? I think overall it's good because it lets some of the forces, kind of the mainline Republicans trying to take over Campaign for Liberty, know that we the people aren't going to let that happen. What's your take?
Well, first of all, the Ron Paul that we see in that clip from the last election is the same Ron Paul that I met in 1975. He's the same Ron Paul today. He's not changed. This is, of course, one of the things we love about him because he is so consistent and his principles are unchanging. He's not going to endorse Mitt Romney any more than he endorsed George W. Bush, any more than he endorsed John McCain. These guys are all fascists. They're all, you know, in favor of all the wars and the police state and all the horrible things that we're seeing come to pass before our eyes right now, whether, as you say, the blimps over Washington and the people think are aliens, when of course it's actually the government that's the alien. So we have no worries about Ron Paul sticking to his principles. I mean, I don't understand how anybody could think otherwise about Ron Paul. He's got a very long record. He does not. He doesn't sell out. This is not Ron Paul. This is why, by the way, he's never had a big political career. You know, he doesn't do that. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours sort of thing of regular politics. He's not a regular politician. He's unique. And for those of people who want to be involved in politics, I make an exception for Ron. But otherwise, I think politics is a snare and a delusion and corrupting and a horrible. It's part of the government, after all. So therefore, you know, it's evil. But Ron Paul's never been part of that. He never has played those games. I'll vote for your pork barrel project. You vote for my pork barrel project. All the stuff that goes on in regular politics, he has never taken part in it. He never would take part in it. And that's why, you know, this guy Romney, he's like the total opposite of Ron. I mean, he's a guy for all the concentration camps, the torture, all the wars, more wars. He's a neocon. He's a fascist. He's a corporate statist. He's a police statist. You know, he has a nice suit. That's about all you can say about Romney. He's got nice hair, too, something I appreciate in other people.
Me too.
But that's about all you can say for Romney. Romney is a monster. Mitt Romney is a very bad man. Ron Paul is not going to endorse a monster. It's just not going to happen. And nobody should think that. Nobody should worry about it.
I know you're a classy guy and don't want to throw stones, but I really want to see Rand rethink this idea that we're going to change the mainline Republicans by compromising with them. I mean, I understand what he's saying intellectually, politically, but also I understand that way leads to ruin. That's how you join the dark side. And what you said about Mitt Romney, I mean, he makes Bill Clinton look truthful. I mean, he is such an incredible, not even a flip-flopper. He is a total deceiver. Another clip from that video, Ron Paul of 2012 needs to listen to Ron Paul of 2008. And I rarely have a Ron Paul clip, or I don't think ever, and then piggyback on it selling something. But Knowledge is power. It's win-win. We promote what we believe in. You fund us with your prisonplanet.tv memberships to see the nightly news and video of the daytime show, buying the high-quality water filters like ProPure and getting 10% discount with promo code WATER at Infowars.com or InfoWarsShop.com, supporting our online sponsors, our radio sponsors, buying the books, the videos, the T-shirts. We don't come with a gun and make you listen to the show or buy the products. And that's why the mainstream media, Nightline, MSNBC, whenever they're here, they're like, you make money. I'm like, well, I didn't get a banker bailout like NBC got. $500 million, it was reported, over 2 years of bailout money. I'm just here selling high-quality products I use. Again, that's how they operate, but that's a side issue. The point is that go to Infowars.com, because Ron Paul talked about why you don't vote for the lesser of two evils and how Bill Clinton's mentor, Carroll Quigley at Georgetown, wrote a book about the elite that he endorsed. They let him into the Bilderberg archives, Tragedy and Hope. It's back in print. Believe me, he's dead. He's not glad it's back in print, because they didn't want the public reading this. Available at Infowars.com. Discounted. It gets a free citizen rule book with every order. And back in print, because they sold out all the ones that were printed back in the 70s. None Dare Call It Conspiracy, the book that crystallized my awakening at about 13 years old, when a couple of these were on the bookshelf, because one of my dad's John Birch Society buddies was always bringing them by. And I pulled it off the shelf and read it. And I'd already read so much history. I was kind of a bookworm slash jock, but the point is that it all made sense, and that's what created much of who Alex Jones is today. It's back in print, a new, lovely little edition, $14 at Infowars.com today, or Infowarsshop.com, or call 888-253-3139, 888-253-3139. You can also write to us at P.O. Box 19549, Austin, Texas, 78760. Let's play a minute or so of Ron Paul talking about tragedy and hope and what Carroll Quigley said about the lesser of two evils and how the system tries to control the left and the right. And then we'll get the take on that from iconic libertarian and I guess anarchic capitalist, you could call him, Lew Rockwell, here in just a moment. But here's Ron Paul from his concession speech or what have you, talking about would he join a third party back in 2008. He didn't endorse John McCain. Here it is.
You know, quite a few years ago, when I think it was when Bill Clinton was inaugurated, was in one of his speeches, he recognized one single individual as being very important to him philosophically. And that was a bit of surprise, because I knew about the individual, and some of you may know about him, but it's worth looking into. And his name was Carroll Quigley. He wrote the book Tragedy and Hope. Now, the important part of Tragedy and Hope and Carroll Quigley is that he claims that he was on the inside and part of the group that, you know, did the planning. But why did he write Tragedy and Hope? To expose these people behind the scenes? Because he believed they were far enough advanced, it didn't have to be secret, they could be out in the open, and this is the way it works. It's a tragedy if you don't accept this, and there's hope if you know who runs the show. That's my interpretation, but I believe it's correct. But let me read a quote from him, and thinking about where he's coming from. He says, the argument that the two parties should represent opposed ideals and policies, one, perhaps the right of the right and the other of the left, is a foolish idea, acceptable only to the doctrinaire and academic thinkers. Instead, the two parties should be almost identical, so that the American people can throw the rascals out at any election without leading to any profound or extensive shift in policy. I mean, I think that is profound statement, because it tells us what's going on and why things don't change.
All right, so there you go. Lew Rockwell
here today.
Again, your take on what Ron Paul said 4 years ago. I mean, that says it all. And what's your view on this whole global corporate monopoly men system?
Of course, Carroll Quigley was exactly right. Very influential professor at Georgetown University for many years. And as Ron mentioned, Clinton cited him and thanked him in his acceptance speech at the Democratic Convention. But it's absolutely true. And we just have to look at the two parties. The two parties are identical. as Butler Schaefer says, two wings of the same bird of prey. They're both part of the government. That's why they can't be taken over, by the way. It's not any more possible to take over the Republican Party than you can take over the Department of Justice. And they're evil. They're part of the government. But yes, they're both set up to be slightly different rhetorically, but in policies, be exactly the same. Mitt Romney is a Goldman Sachs guy. Barack Obama is a Goldman Sachs guy. Barack Obama's for all these wars. Mitt Romney's for all these wars. They're both for the police state and so forth. So this is why we have a two-party system. It's why they don't want multiple parties, and it's why there's no, except in style, there's no difference. This is not an accident. It's deliberate. It's why they love democracy. One of the many reasons they love democracy has been a great thing for the growth of the state. Everybody thinks Hans Hoppe's great book on democracy, The God That Failed, is the key guide to why democracy, as it's developed, is just an instrument for the state to use against the rest of us. And Quigley, of course, is very important to read. I'm so glad you're bringing Gary Allen's book back into print. Gary Allen was a very great man, great writer, and this is a wonderful book, Alex. So these are all things worth reading. And as usual, as you point out in this YouTube from Ron, he's always worth listening to. That's true today. It was true 30 or 40 years ago. It was true when he first got into public life in reaction to Richard Nixon's closing of the gold window and imposing price and wage controls on the economy in 1971. He's the same guy, and he's a sure guide to all this sort of thing. And look him up on YouTube. Of all these, he's got many YouTubes from all his earlier campaigns, from his congressional speeches. They're all worth listening to. And he's just but again, don't expect anybody else to be Ron Paul. There's only been one Ron Paul. And I would say that even though I support Ron Paul in all his, in everything he does in terms of his political races, politics is a snare and a delusion. I mean, there's only one Ron Paul. Maybe there will be somebody else in the future. We can't rule it out. But there's only one of these guys in 200 years, so they don't come along very often. And we should appreciate what we've got. We should support him, read him, author of many important books. He's also a great intellectual. I mean, this again separates him. He's a reader. Separates him from the people in politics who aren't readers, who aren't intellectuals.
Oh, I got to tell you, I've interviewed Ron.
Tells him to do.
You can ask him something that just broke that day that's pretty obscure, and he knows about it. I don't think I've ever brought anything up to him that he didn't already know about, and then he'll know about stuff I don't know about. I mean, I guess that's all he's doing is researching. That's our interview with Lew Rockwell. When we come back, there's a secret nuclear program in Austin, Texas. Some of it is admitted, a lot of it's underground. A rail gun blew up a few days ago outside of Austin, part of a Department of Defense program with UT. We're going to look at the secret nuclear program straight ahead and possible nuclear waste dumps. This is huge information. Stay with us. We'll be right back. We take you now to InfoWars Nightly News reporter Aaron Dykes as we begin part one of our investigation into the secret national security complexes buried under Austin, Texas. Railguns, nuclear reactors, and more.
We have an InfoWars exclusive report uncovering the nuclear secrets of Austin, Texas, as dangerous experimentations in the continuity of government threatens our very way of life.
We have been compelled to create a permanent armaments industry of vast proportions. We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
From before the days of President Dwight D. Eisenhower, the military-industrial complex has dominated research at universities across the United States.
We must also be alert to the equal and opposite danger that public policy could itself become the captive of a scientific, technological elite in laboratories and testing fields. The Free University has experienced a revolution in the conduct of research.
There have been many disasters. In California in 1959, a large sodium reactor melted down, and many estimates show that it was over 70 times bigger than 3 Mile Island and similar in effect to Chernobyl. but Americans weren't told about it for decades later.
The reactor problem in July of 1959 involved partial core meltdown was not publicly acknowledged until decades later.
That's why it's important to look at all the secret and covert infrastructure across the United States, including Austin, Texas, the site of 3 different covert nuclear reactors, and reports of huge caches of radioactive waste being hidden in the community of Austin, Texas. This is similar to large stockpiles that have been found in California and other states. No one wants the waste in their community, so government and universities tend to hide it. Alex Jones here with a breaking first report on the underground infrastructure that literally infest Austin, Texas, and surrounding areas. Bioweapons, rail guns, secret cyclotron facilities exploding just a few days ago, and big underground nuclear plants, research facilities. Some of the biggest research facilities in the country, right here in Austin, and almost no newspaper articles about it. The articles we found online by the Statesman and others have been removed. Wikipedia has had the record of it expunged. But my father, when he was going to the University of Texas in the late 60s and was in departments that had access to the downtown reactor, saw it himself, worked on it as part of his physics class. Then in the late 80s, they built new, larger reactors in North Austin. We're going to show you both of those. But in our investigation of these secretive infrastructures the Department of Defense is controlling right here in Austin, but also in many other cities around the country, we discovered that hiding right under our nose, our own Chris Oden's great-grandfather had been the head superintendent of all the facilities for the University of Texas in Austin, the biggest campus in the world. And that up until 1970, when he retired, he told his great-grandson and family, for that matter, that the huge underground cave system right outside Austin had been used as a secret dumping ground. So, Chris, here in our office, tell folks exactly what your grandfather told you that they stored in there, and how big this cave system is.
My great-grandfather, Benny Ellis, had told me many times about a site on the western portion of Austin, what used to be the outside of the city limits, right off of Redbud Trail. I'd say just a couple of 100 yards south of where the dam is at the beginning of the Old Town Lake, Lady Bird Lake, whatever they call it. And he told me for many years, they had dumped barrels of chemical waste, heavy chests and containers of metal waste that he knew to be radioactive. He described them as containers with biohazard labels, radioactive labels. He had the responsibility of controlling transportation, and so in many cases, he was witness to such events.
And you said that your great-grandfather said that they would wall it off and that there were areas that were cemented, so they would put it back in crevices.
Over the years, even when looking at the cave entrance site, there are layers that are comprised of older concrete. You can see it's pitted and has aged, and then there have been newer installations where it's more polished, updated concrete. They've even disguised, or what I consider disguised, a portion of it as drainage for the entrance that goes underneath the cliff that's near it.
This is a big deal because we have this history, not just here, but in Russia, Japan, where they just store this stuff all over the place. They store it in warehouses illegally. Repeat what you told me on the radio earlier today about the fact that they started moving it out to Redbud because it had been in East Austin.
Yes, according to him, for many years they had been attempting to store wastes of many kind, dumping wastes of many kind, as well as simply storing heavy equipment used by the university out where what is today Disch-Falk Field. It's a large baseball diamond. That part of Austin was East Austin, typically known for having a higher minority population. There was a lot of blowback from the community, and they, in turn, began to store it underground in those lesser-known facilities.
Hey, this is stored in the richest part of Austin now.
It was not at that time. It was city limits. There was very little development. It was country. It was, at that time...
Now, I've got friends that live out there, and there's old fishing shacks and things from the 30s and 40s, and that's all that was out there.
Right.
I mean, that was the countryside.
Exactly.
Now, before we get into the full report, that's just part one, because this just started developing yesterday, What's your overall view, and did your great-grandfather, who was the head of superintendent of facilities at UT for all those years, do you ever talk about the reactor underneath the presidential library?
He did describe what many had said was underneath the Robert Lee Memorial Building. He said that there was more activity going on under the ground than above the ground. The campus was enormous, and the tunnels were vast. They were able to do things like transfer library books from one building to another underground when weather wouldn't permit. He even described times when personnel would use underground corridors instead of traveling above ground.
And it's not just Austin, Texas. There is secret infrastructure in every major city. But even my grandfather and family that lived here in Austin talked about the old SAC base that's now our international airport, Bergstrom. And they admit that the Hilton Hotel out there is the big SAC command building, was that. And I've talked to family who's currently in the military who says, well, we can't talk about it, but yes, there's a big underground base there. There's railways connected to UT, the Capitol, and all the way out to Fort Hood, 60 miles away. I mean, it's amazing. The United States has spent more money than all other countries combined on defense, but also on COG, continuity of government. Can you imagine how big these underground bases are? I mean, I've been told it's just staggering, the whole giant secret government corporate infrastructure that's underground.
Despite the bedrock here, despite the manpower that would go into such a thing, I know I've been told of underground bases, even located at the Capitol, that were installed during the Cold War simply for bomb shelters.
Chris Oden, thank you for taking time out to talk with us today. We're going to get into the full report right now from you guys on the street yesterday, Aaron Dykes, yourself, and Rob Jacobson running camera. And we're going to have a part 2 next week. This rabbit hole goes very, very deep. The fact that most Austinites don't even know that bioweapons are being developed in Austin, that if they got out would kill over 90% of the people, things like mousepox, things like airborne Ebola. The fact that we've got an old reactor still operating, hidden underneath UT downtown, and then 2 up north, and you tell the average person and they laugh at you and there's almost no news coverage. You have to go back to the 80s to even find Austin American Statesman articles on this. This is wild. We'll be right back with more concerning the secret infrastructure underneath Austin, Texas. Just heard part 1 of our first report concerning secret technology underground bases here in Austin, Texas. Our reporters go to the scene of where nuclear waste may be buried.
Aaron Dykes here for Infowars.com. We're here on the UT campus in downtown Austin to expose some of the secret infrastructure that goes on at universities. Right here in Austin, Texas, there are several nuclear facilities. One is reportedly underground this campus. There's another at the J.J. Pickle Research Facility, part of the larger Austin system, just a few miles north of downtown here in Austin, Texas. Now, I'm standing here with one of our newest production team members, Christopher Oden, and not only is he a long-term Austin resident, his grandfather used to be a superintendent right here on UT campus. Christopher, tell us what you know.
I do know that for a number of years, according to my great-grandfather, Benjamin Ellis, there was research conducted here that was not only kept under great security and great secrecy, it was done by other agencies than just the University of Texas. I know that not only is there a nuclear reactor approximately 6 stories beneath our feet and the facilities to maintain such a reactor, there are a number of them, at least 1, possibly 2, at the Pickle Research Center, about 15 miles north of here, as well as various locations in local caves within Travis County.
Right here at J.J. Pickle, there's actually a nuclear reactor, a full-scale nuclear system going on behind research facilities, biolabs, and other regular university functions that are going on. And we want to know, why is this being covered up? Why is it not talked about? We have footage we're going to show you of some of the cooling towers, and on Google Earth you can see some of the cooling ponds that are used for nuclear reactors. On June 13, 2012, there was an explosion at another research facility, which really just raises bigger questions about a lot of the secretive and often dangerous research that goes on under the auspices of university education.
The University of Texas has been much less than transparent about a lot of their activities. They have nanotechnology projects that are published, but they've been very, very hush-hush about their nuclear reactor work.
We do know across the country, approximately 48 out of 64 nuclear reactor locations are admittedly leaking, admittedly rotting. They're leaking the radioactive element tritium into water supplies. That's all in MSNBC and other mainstream sources. So we know there's something going on. We know nuclear is not as clean as we were once convinced it was. And so the idea that something even more covert could be going on with dumping this material is certainly alarming. We're here at a location in a ravine just off of the Tom Miller Dam, south of the Colorado River here in Austin. And CJ here will explain what our sources told us.
My great-grandfather did tell me that the University of Texas was using this area to dispose of nuclear waste.
As we learn more about the disturbing nuclear secrets of Austin and its threats to the environment, we began to understand how little we really know about what's going on in government and the world we live in. This is Aaron Dykes for Infowars.com, signing off.
And we will continue to bring you more coverage on that story as it unfolds. Meanwhile, we have learned that the CDC Bioterror Lab in Atlanta has had some serious problems with the airflow systems that they designed to stop the release of infectious agents. This revealed in government documents and internal emails. And this is the area of the building where they store anthrax. They have dangerous strains of influenza stored there, monkeypox, you name it. These are microbes that have the potential to be used as bioweapons. And if any of these microbes were to get released on accident, let's say through one of those faulty ventilation systems, then there is seriously a potential for a global pandemic. It is that serious. And are there bioweapons labs in your neighborhood? InfoWars Nightly News investigates. Government-funded universities across the Western world are developing massive warehouses full of bioweapons that they say is for biodefense under the BioShield program. Airborne Ebola, smallpox, bubonic plague, bird flu, and the H1N1 superbug are being weaponized and kept in moderately secured facilities like at the Galveston National Laboratory on the campus of the University of Texas. Now, this may be one of the biggest threats we now face, as the risk of a deadly virus escaping one of these laboratories and starting a global pandemic, well, it is a clear and present danger.
Weaponized airborne Ebola, super weaponized viruses and bacteria that kill over 90%, 9 out of 10 people on your street dead. The National Research Council, which is an arm of the National Academy of Sciences, released a report concerning potential hazardous risk associated with the new multi-million-dollar infectious disease research lab currently under construction in Kansas. It's located only 120 miles west of Kansas City. It's called the National Bio and Agro Defense Facility, and even though it's a Level 4 biolab, which is the highest secured rating issued by the CDC, the expert panel found that there is nearly a 70% chance that a disease will escape the laboratory during its planned 50-year operational lifespan. And it went on to say that the U.S. Department of Homeland Security has not adequately gauged the potential risk of a dangerous airborne pathogen escaping the compound. There are what they call bioweapons that are in unsecured, well, moderately secured environments, like in Galveston, Texas, and the CDC even went to one of these facilities in Kansas, and they're not nearly as safe as they would hope. And they even said, the CDC even said the one in Kansas has a 70% chance of some dangerous virus getting released.
I mean, what are the bylaws in keeping them safe? I don't think there's anything even designated to making sure that they're safe. It's such it's that gray area of the world that nobody really thinks about, but is. Like,
So you think it's a clear and present danger that we should try to prepare for, something like that?
I think everybody should always be prepared for anything. You know, it's like hope for the best, prepare for the worst.
Can you imagine the awakening that's going to happen if they release those bioweapons? After we've warned people so much, God Almighty, I hope the next phases of what we've broken down don't happen. God Almighty, I hope they don't. But I know one thing, I'm sure selfish. I've sure gotten my family ready.
Do you think it's wise for people that collect food and they have stockpiles of food and stuff like that just in case of emergency and have a place to go just in case something like this were to happen?
I don't have anything stockpiled.
I'm all about having weapons. I'm all about getting as much ammunition as you can getting it, because everybody's going to get crazy. They're going to want to get their hands on whatever sources are available: food, water, natural resources, anything to keep the normalcy of life continuing.
That's why I'm out here on the streets. I want to learn some street smarts, and if it goes down, then I want to be able to
find your way around it.
Yeah.
Now, let me tell you something. Once something like that goes down, the people in the high-rise apartments and stuff, they're not going to know what to do. It's the people with street smarts are going to be
They won't be able to survive.
Just making sure that you have the resources that you need, because when the world gets chaotic, everybody loses their minds.
Let me put this in layman terms. A level 4 bioweapons lab should be 3 floors under the ground, barbed wire fences, minefields, and machine guns, and a system that if the super germs get out, they pull a lever, alarms go off, and the whole place goes up in flames. But instead, the global elite are storing it in level 2 facilities like the University of Texas at Galveston, behind a glass door with a swipe guard, right there in Petri dishes. And they're doing this so that when they release it to massively reduce population, they can claim it was an accident. Now, you notice in this report that we also get into biological weapons. There are hundreds of facilities now in the United States, 36 that are level 4 bioweapons labs, including the University of Texas at Galveston, that are in level 2 facilities. And Darren McBreen just went over that information. Now, I hope and pray that our source is incorrect about a covert nuclear waste dump hidden in the hill country outside Austin, Texas. But this fits into what we've seen all over the United States, from reactor programs in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, where they would just bury it in caves or under warehouses. This is a huge story, so it's up to the media to investigate this. The fact that so many Austinites, where I live, and we're broadcasting worldwide right now, don't even know that the University of Texas has all these secret nuclear reactors. Again, I call them secret because they admit that they exist, but imply and act like you're some type of kook if you talk about them or ask questions. So we all live here. We have children here. We have children across this country and the world. And it's time we recognize that nuclear energy is not as clean as they claimed it was. Just look at Fukushima. Just look at Chernobyl. We'll be right back. Stay with us. The second hour is straight ahead. It's the evil conspiracy theorist that doesn't believe known liars that have been caught lying thousands of times. I'm very thankful that you've joined us on this June 17th, 2012 worldwide transmission for human liberty in defense of freedom and resistance to tyranny and oppressive pot-bellied scumbags of every formation. They're good pot-bellies, by the way. Just the globalists happen to be pot-bellies generally, so we throw that in. I mean, I'm kind of small pot-belly myself. I mean, no attack on pot-bellies. I mean, I attack folks with mustaches, just noticing all the police have mustaches. But I'm not saying it's bad to have a mustache. Why? I happen to have one as well. It's just you can't see it. All right, another lame attempt at humor. We are taping this Friday here in the time-space continuum, and you are listening on Sunday, and so am I, on my trusty free iPhone app. Oh, yeah. And we've got quite a bit coming up for you. Big interview I did this week with Jesse Ventura, former Minnesota governor. That's coming up. And then we're going to talk about the transhumanist and the Russian government and the UN telling us that humanity as we know it is over. That is coming up as well at the end of this worldwide transmission. And we have also done a lot of other exciting things in the fight against tyranny, because I'm only alive once. Every day I get up at about 6 a.m., sometimes earlier, and I think, they could kill me anytime. I better really do a good job today. And, of course, I don't most of the time, but I mean, we're only alive once, and we're fighting a bunch of scum, and I want to defeat them. I believe in humanity. We've got a good chance to defeat these people. We've launched PlanetInfowars.com, the social network. Hundreds of thousands of people visit it every day. 21,000 people have actually joined it and created profiles, written articles, posted incredible art, poetry, meetup groups, dating, liberty lovers on there. So please be sure and check out PlanetInfowars.com today or this evening, because that's what it's all about. You know, we had a little social network and it failed because it was just a plug-in. It had like 30-something thousand members, I don't know, 40,000 members. And I've run into so many people that met each other, got married, had children, love liberty together. So that's a small part of what it's about, but that's one of the main drivers, because I do believe in matchmaking people that love freedom and getting them together. So be sure and check out PlanetInfowars.com. Again, we're going to go to break and give you 3 different segments of the hour interview with former Minnesota Governor Jesse Ventura. The system is demonizing, the fact that his TV show probably won't air, the fact that a lot of stuff's been censored, the fact that he is suing that Navy SEAL guy for claiming he punched him out as part of a swift boating operation. That is all coming up with Jesse Ventura and then the larger transhumanist agenda. But we're all in this together. You know, the globalists believe they're God because they understand the human life cycle. They studied humans and like they're aliens and decided to manipulate us. But in doing that, they manipulate themselves because it's all blowback. As much as they try to stay separate from us, they're still part of us, even if they are the cancerous part that acts in a psychopathic fashion. So that is the bottom line on that front. I also want to add, I couldn't do this without the listeners. I couldn't do this radio show without the great team and the folks. It's Friday night, and we're just now recording this for Sunday, and Chris Alaniz is going to be late in the evening, not seeing his wife and children, to get this edited and packaged for you on Sunday. So I want to give a wink and a nod and a curtsy. Like I gave Lord Moncton when he was here. Chris, did I not give him a full curtsy? Even though men aren't supposed to do that, it was very obnoxious and funny, and he laughed a lot about it. Very fun to desecrate royalty. He's a good guy, but he understood the joke. Of course, I'm not celebrating the Diamond Jubilee. I'm just going to be honest with everybody here right now. But that's it. We're going to come back with Jesse Ventura and the Transhumanist 2045. It's all coming up. Onward and beyond, or in, through, and beyond, as they say in the film Black Hole. Again, I'm Alex Jones reporting from the front lines of the InfoWar, a free human that wished for liberty and prosperity and decency and transparency, one who believed in honor and all that is good, one who sought to defend innocence. In essence, an enemy of the state, an enemy of the New World Order. All truth lovers, stay tuned. Globalist, go straight to hell. We'll be back. Stay with us. Well, time flies. It's hard to believe that I've known Jesse Ventura like 6, 7, almost, it's over 7 years now. We were just talking during the break. His dog's 8 years old now. I'm the same, his age in dog years. My children are shooting up like weeds. Life is certainly short. And Jesse Ventura is back from Mexico in another great book. He told me the name of the book about a year ago when he started writing it. And boy, it's perfect timing right now. People are really sick of both parties, Democrips and Republicans. No more gangs in government. It's already racing up the New York Times bestseller list. All his books have been New York Times bestsellers. I think one of them was even a #1. He can correct me if I'm wrong. We've got the book at Infowars.com. Discounted with his other great books, American Conspiracies and 63 Documents the Government Doesn't Want You to Read, all at Infowars.com and bookstores everywhere. Again, Governor, we've got the waterfront to cover here. TSA, nanny state, weaponized drones, your lawsuit against the Navy SEAL that lied about you and why you went ahead with that. All of it is coming up. Rand Paul, there's so many issues. But let's get into your new book. I think it's one of your best. Where did you come up with the name? And for folks that are listening right now, what does the book break down?
Well, the name, I don't recall who it was. It might have been Senator Dean Barkley, who I appointed to fill the Wellstone seat after Senator Wellstone died. It may have come from him or whatever. But somebody at some point in my life, within the last decade, referred to the two parties as the Democrips and the Republicans. And I thought it was so perfect because when you look, okay, let's go to the Crips and the Bloods, the two street gangs that we use their people, these two parties are even more dangerous than the street gangs are, because the Crips and the Bloods only occupy small little areas of the U.S. where they can be dangerous, the gangs. The Republicans and the Democrats affect each and every one of us every day. Every American is affected by these two gangs, the Democrats and the Republicans. And so I wrote the book because I wanted to expose how horrible it is in light of the Supreme Court's decision that money is free speech and that corporations have the same rights as an individual. It's now completely out of hand, Alex. These corporations are funneling so many millions of dollars into these campaigns, and these two parties have created a system that is based completely on bribery. If you bribe them, you will get what you want. If you don't, well, you're just out of luck then. Now, what troubles me a great deal is that if we commit a bribe offense in the private sector, you go to jail. And yet our whole political system is based upon bribery. And, you know, and money is free speech. Well, I'd love to see the next bank robber, when he goes to trial, say, well, Your Honor, I was simply exercising my right of free speech. You know? Because after all, our Supreme Court said that money is free speech. And so clearly our courts are failing us. The Democrats and Republicans, the legislative branch is failing us. The president and the executive branch is failing us. And the fourth branch, the unwritten branch of government, the media, is failing us. Why? Because the media, it was interesting, I saw Dan Rather on the other day. And if you'll recall, he got fired because he reported on George Bush the kid, his service record. Well, every bit of it was true, and Dan Rather got fired for telling the truth. And the other thing, the point Rather made was, back then there were probably 40 media outlets giving us information. Today you're down to about 4 corporations that control all the media in the United States. And that's dangerous, because they're the corporate, and that's the definition of fascism. The corporations are controlling our government. They're controlling our media. If you read the works of General Smedley Butler, the 2-time Congressional Medal of Honor winner, the most decorated Marine in history, he died in the 40s. Smedley Butler said, I didn't fight for the American people. I fought for the United Fruit Corporation. When they didn't get cooperation in South and Central America, they sent in the Marines to get it.
And that's what your book breaks down. And you're right. I mean, the Crips and Bloods might kill 500 people or less a year. I was looking up some of the crime statistics. It was more than 1,000 a year or so during the peak in the mid and late 1980s. The gangs that run our country are militarizing the police, federalizing him, torturing people, passing the NDAA, saying they'll kill citizens when they want, saying they'll kill U.S. citizens with weaponized drones inside the U.S. They're taxing the daylights out of us. They're spying on us without warrants and just admitting it. Bill Gates is coming out with bracelets for students that will determine emotional cognitive response, tracking their waves, their brain waves. I mean, this is like a science fiction nightmare. And the Democrips and Republicans got caught insider trading, as you know, Governor. Sure. And they said, oh, it's legal for us. And then you've got Legrand over in the IMF saying she's exempt from taxes, but Greece needs to pay more. I mean, we've got a criminal class running wild. How do we reverse it? I know the book addresses that. What's your ideas to stop these people?
Well, the first thing we could do, the most important thing for anyone that wants to strike out as a patriot against where our government's going today, stop voting for them. That's the simple thing you can do. Quit voting for Democrats, Republicans. I am going to fully endorse my former colleague, Governor Gary Johnson of New Mexico. He's a terrific man. He has the endorsement of the Libertarian Party, and he will get my vote. I will campaign relentlessly for him, because Ron Paul apparently is going to end it at the end of the Republican convention. I don't hear any word at all that he's going to go independent at all. The Libertarians made their move already. And so I will support Governor Johnson completely. He's quit the Republican Party because they wouldn't even allow him to debate or even participate because he wasn't the chosen one. And let me add, for people so they realize something, recall and go back to when the Obama-McCain election took place, and of course President Obama won. Immediately upon that, we started seeing ads on television about the Mormon religion. Remember those?
Yes.
All over TV, we started getting influx of the
giant billboards. Giant.
I'm also a Mormon.
Yeah, giant billboards too.
Oh yeah. Well, that was to prepare us. They already had Romney picked out at that point. The Republican, all this debates was baloney. Always remember this: you don't pick your president; the two gangs do. You'll get a gang member from one side and a gang member from the other side, and then you're expected to choose which one of those gang members you want to be the president.
And they are a gang.
People can now change that and vote for Governor Johnson to be our next president.
Governor Ventura, I think this is an excellent idea that you have to really try to brand things as the Republicans being the Bloods and the Democrats being the Crips. It's really starting to get political traction out there, and I think that's why you told me off air you're running into a lot of censorship. You're having your interviews cut short or canceled. We're going to talk about that. But since we got into the 2012 race, Ron Paul is not as hardcore on a lot of issues now. Rand came out and endorsed Mitt Romney. His father did not endorse in the presidential election, of course, McCain. This is a big departure. People are upset about that. What's your take on it?
Well, how do you not endorse your own father? I mean, Ron Paul hasn't officially left the race. They haven't even had their convention yet. So my view is that, the Tea Party's phony. I cover that in this book. They've been taken over by the Koch brothers. What maybe started off as a good idea, then you ended up with Glenn Beck, Sarah Palin, and all them. The same as the Wall Street movement is trying to be co-opted by the Democrats. Well, these movements, you can't allow that to happen, and that is typical gang warfare.
Dwell on this too much because Governor Ventura wants it all to come out in court. That's what his lawyers have advised. I agree with them. It's going to come out. Depositions have begun. I don't know how much Ventura can repeat here, but do you feel that you've been swift-boated, and when was the last time you were in a barroom fight, Governor?
Well, I absolutely feel that I've been swift-boated. There's no doubt about it. And what was interesting when it happened to Senator Kerry, I learned later that his main accuser did not even arrive in Vietnam until months after Senator Kerry had already come home to the States. So the guy wasn't even there to question whether the senator had earned his medals or not. And besides, you don't put yourself in for medals, your commanding officer does. So it was really, yeah, I feel I've been swift-boated, there's no doubt about it. But as I said, I wouldn't be suing the guy if the story were true. And the story is completely false, and therefore my only alternative to clear my name and to attempt to get it cleared is to take him to court, and I'll let a jury decide who they want to believe.
Can we talk about your lawyers if they're confident?
Absolutely they're confident. That's all I'll say. Yes, they're very confident, or I wouldn't be going to court.
No, I know, but you told me that off air, but I want to make sure that wasn't...
They feel very good about the case, that they can win the case, but you never know for certain.
Yeah, just to be clear, I'm not leading Jesse Ventura. I'm trying to get him to repeat stuff he's told me without letting out what he's told me. But I tell you, the right thing to do is Chris Kyle needs to go ahead and go public now and admit the truth before this gets much deeper. Just go ahead and tell us what News Corps told you to do.
Well, it would be my preference, Alex, not to go to court because court gets very expensive, but he leaves me no choice. I mean, he won't admit that the story's made up for whatever reason. It's not true, and so I'm left with no alternative but to go to federal court and let a jury decide it. But
when I first met you 7 years ago, I heard some propaganda on the web, so I went and looked it up myself, made some phone calls, and found out you were telling the truth. But just to bring this up here, and then we'll get back into all the other issues in the book that's so powerful. Again, the last three have been so good, so informative. I don't know which one's my favorite, but Lord Monckton, he is a hereditary peer. It's listed on the royal websites in England. His dad was a famous lord, and he's Lord Christopher Monckton, an anti-global warming guy. You interviewed him for one of your TV shows. They ran a big hoax saying he's not a lord, and he made it up, and counting on the public being ignorant. So they say you're not a Navy SEAL. Well, I was like, wait a minute. Underwater Demolition Team, the History Channel says that's what started the SEALs. He went through SEALs training. He was, in the Vietnam era. And I went and looked and found out that it was people that didn't like your anti-war stance came out and said you were never in the SEALs. Next, they may say that I'm not even who I say I am either. We have to defend each other when they come out with these hoaxes. If they come out, folks, and say I'm a drug dealer, it's not true. I mean, I have a pretty boring life. I mean, it scares me to know, what are they going to make up about us next, Governor?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And in this country today, you have to be prepared to defend yourself, especially with the Internet. Anything can be put on the Internet. The Internet's a great thing. Don't get me wrong. It's tremendous because it gives us a great deal of information that we don't get with the mainstream media. But on the flip side, just like anything, there's an upside and there's a downside. On the downside, you have to be very careful what you believe and choose to believe because anyone can lie on the Internet. There is nothing there, no truth detection device that you can apply to the Internet.
Well, sure,
know absolutely if you're hearing the truth or not.
It's just like the mainstream media. You've got to go to the original sources.
Yep.
And that brings us to the next issue. Again, you've told me a lot of stuff in confidence, which I appreciate because I've been part of the show 3 seasons. We've gotten to be friends. A lot of crazy stuff went on behind the scenes, but I've been sworn to secrecy about the things that happened. Not just the congressman calling or Homeland Security threatening Time Warner, the parent company of True TV. We know they pulled your Homeland Security piece on the FEMA camps. Since that happened, the Army governor has admitted they have re-education camps. We got a document 2 months ago. The Army responded, said, yes, that's a classified document. So now you've been validated, but they had that pulled, erased off TiVo, never re-aired as the other episodes do dozens of times. What is happening with the 3rd installment of Conspiracy Theory?
Well, unfortunately, we finished it all in November. Normally it would go on the air in January. It's now sitting there being nitpicked with more, I think it's a delay tactic. I now believe 50-50 that the 8 shows we did this fall will never see the light of day because it's already June. We had them done in November, and they're supposedly still doing the fine-tuning of editing. Well, give me a break. You can get that done in 2 to 3 weeks, a month at the most.
Well, they made them totally re-edit it and then still didn't like it, but both shows were big hits. Big hits.
Well, both seasons have been outstanding, and this would have been the 3rd season of 8 more shows, but I don't know if they're ever going to see the light of day or not. True TV has the right to not put them on, certainly, and I see no indication that they're going to be on. They may, I don't know, maybe they'll wait till fall and put them on during the election time. That'd be wonderful. But I don't know. I mean, they've sure, they've gone out of their normal mode because normally we finish them in November and they air right away in January.
And the major TV publications reported that both seasons got record viewers for new seasons. 1.7, 1.8 million viewers for that channel is as big as it basically gets for them. Huge hits and millions spent to make them. And now the question is, do you think putting pressure on them, people contacting them, will have any effect? Or do you think outside pressure has been placed on them?
I think that could work the opposite. That could make them not put them on. If the people who are deciding because they're too controversial or they have information that the public doesn't want to get, and if the public starts demanding it, that'll make them even lock them up more. I don't know. I don't know which way to go on that, Alex. Certainly people are entitled to express their opinion. If they would like to contact them, I'm not going to tell them not to. You can do what you want. I'm a great believer in personal freedom. And every one of your listeners should have the ability to have personal freedom. If they want to write a letter asking what's happened to conspiracy theory, why are you sitting on it, why won't you air them the way Jesse dumbing them down, which is really what they're trying to do. I think they're trying to really dumb them down.
Yeah, it's. I've been told the behind-the-scenes stuff. I better just keep my mouth shut because it was told in confidence. It's pretty bad.
When I first came out of office, I was the hottest commodity out there. I didn't seek a second term. I was the voice of the independent. As Eleanor Cliff called me the high priest of the third-party movement. So they got in a bidding war between Fox, MSNBC, and CNN, which would give me a show 5 days a week on television in the evening. And MSNBC won out. Well, we went together. We followed everything they wanted done. They even I wanted it shot in Minneapolis because I felt it would be nice to get a Midwest perspective for a change rather than the East or West Coast where they do most of their stuff. And they agreed to it. So they even sent an MSNBC guy out to work with us and create the whole show. We did everything they wanted, and Eric Sorensen, who was in charge, came out. He didn't even watch the show we did and told us that he wouldn't put us on the air. Well, then let me back up a little. When they first hired me, Eric took me to the Super Bowl in San Diego, and we were driving up to Los Angeles then. And in the car, he told me that after he hired me, he got 2 phone calls from people very high up in Washington. He would never reveal to me who they were, but he said that these people were very angry and wanted to know why they were giving me a national forum, a show on national TV.
Wow.
Well, lo and behold, I never got it because they pulled the plug on the show, basically. They relegated us to a few Saturday shows where I think we had 4 or 5 shows on Saturday at 5 o'clock. It was still the second highest rated show they had, right behind Hardball with Chris Matthews. And then they simply cut me, and because I was under contract with them for 3 years, and I honor my contracts stated that I could not do any news shows, nor could I participate in anything on cable television at all. So in essence, they bound and gagged me, and they paid me the entire money, and I will just say this, I was paid like a professional athlete on that level. They paid me the entire 3 years. My checks came. Even my assistant got paid for the entire 3 years. But I had to then, as I said, honor my contract. And so for 3 years, I could not speak out on anything.
Yeah, you were the hottest commodity out there, I remember. And they literally, at the time, I said on air, he's off the air, that's golden handcuffs. They do that to executives and people that they're scared of that'll go start a new company. You were given golden handcuffs, Governor.
Yeah, I'm sure I was. And then, of course, the contract ended, and that 3 years later, that's when you saw me reemerge again when I wrote the book, Don't Start the Revolution Without Me, the first book. And I then started, of course, going on TV shows and all that because they no longer contracted.
And that got high ratings, and you destroyed Hannity. You do really good in person when people get nasty because you're so calm and work so well on your feet. Now I'm noticing they don't put you on as much, even though you were a sought-after guest. Let's talk about what's happening now. They're really scared of this idea of the Republicans and Democrats being gangs.
Well, like I said, Fox News won't have me on at all. They're nighttime, they're big people. MSNBC will not have me on. They're now the liberal side. They're the Democrat side. The other's the Republican side. Those two, the only TV. Now, Fox News puts me on, but I think they're a different department. I am doing a couple on Fox News, but that's a different ball of wax, I think. And CNN will have me on. Although this morning on CNN, I was supposed to get 3 segments because they asked me for 3 songs to lead in. So I gave them a Whole Lot of Love by Led Zeppelin, Hey Joe by Jimi Hendrix, and Sympathy for the Devil by the Stones. The only one played was Whole Lot of Love because they had me for one brief 3-minute segment this morning. I believe I was cut there even at CNN, although I did have a terrific interview last night with Piers Morgan.
And then you also got cut with, it doesn't really matter, he didn't have many listeners, but Don Imus.
Oh, yeah, Don Imus. They wanted me to have 5 songs, so I chose 5 songs by Rage Against the Machine. And people who don't follow that era of rock, they were banned by Clear Channel. None of their music was allowed to be played prior to and during the Iraq War. So, and I'm a huge fan now of Tom Morello, the lead guitar player. I believe he is our next Woody Guthrie. He's our next Bob Dylan. He's our next Bruce Springsteen. You know, he's out there. He stood with the Occupy Wall Street people. He flew right.
No, I know. I've interviewed him.
To stand with the union workers in Madison against Governor Walker there.
I've had a chance to interview him a few times, because every time I'm at a protest or something, hey, there's Tom Morello. Do you live at these things, buddy?
Well, hey, Tom Morello to me is a great American.
Oh, no, I'm saying he's a very successful big rock star, sold tens of millions of albums, and there he is in a lot of dangerous places, quite frankly. I mean, I see him quite often out there, regular guy with the people.
Well, I would love to get a chance to meet him. Like I said, he's one of my new rock and roll heroes.
Well, he's absolutely down to earth, Jesse. You'd love him. Shifting gears, we talked about this yesterday on the phone, and you laughed and said it doesn't surprise me, but I actually have a big stack of these. Congresswoman lashes out at TSA for hiring pedophiles and child pornographers, and it turns out key head TSA agents over whole gates and airports are defrocked priests, child pornographers, convicted rapists. So this is being done on purpose, and I've got a whole stack of news. You've been out of the country. I want to read this to you. Again, defrocked priest hired as the head in Philadelphia. Representative John Mica calls TSA, the little bastard child. The TSA, again, every 2 days is being caught raping, stealing, molesting, running child porn, running prostitutes. I mean, who else would want to grab people's genitals all day? What is your take on the TSA? And now 2 years you haven't flown, Governor.
Well, I don't know about any of that stuff, Alex, so I'm not going to comment on it. I can only speak to my own experience and how I feel, and that is this. I'm outraged that it cost me $20,000 to go to court in front of a federal judge to be told she didn't have jurisdiction over a constitutional question. And that's what they do with anyone that challenges in our court system, the TSA and Homeland Security. They don't have jurisdiction. Well, people need to understand clearly, when you go to any airport in the United States today, you are not protected by the Constitution or the Bill of Rights. In other words, they can do anything they want to you out there, and there's nowhere you can seek redress because the courts will not hear it.
It's a lawless criminal zone. But let me raise this to you, because I understand you've been out of the country until a few weeks ago. This is the Congresswoman Marsha Blackburn. She listed 50 pedophile crimes of the TSA. I mean, this is in the news. So I'm saying, if that's true, I mean, you told me off air you're not surprised. But no, sir, I mean, it is true that they're finding a bunch of them that are being put in leadership positions are pervs. What do you think of that?
Well, why wouldn't they? I believe that that's why pedophiles become Catholic priests. I believe they're pedophiles first, and they become priests because pedophiles are nothing but predators. They're hunters.
Yes.
They hunt children. They can't be cured. And so they need to put themselves in a position where the hunting is good. And that's why I believe when you got pedophile priests, they were pedophiles long before they became priests.
Yes.
And so why wouldn't they join the TSA, where they can grope little children and where they have the government's blessing to do so? That's one of the places where Lou Dobbs and I stand hand in hand. Lou Dobbs said, "Thank you, Governor," when I brought the lawsuit. And in fact, I'll be doing Lou's show. So it'll be interesting to see, what he says to me about the dismissal of my lawsuit the way it was. But again, it doesn't surprise me because pedophiles are predators, and they're going to go wherever the hunting is best to satisfy their sick, demented minds when they should belong in jail. They'll put pot smokers in jail, but they'll turn pedophiles loose in the neighborhood.
Well said, Governor. You're absolutely right. I just wanted you to repeat what you said privately on the phone yesterday. And yes, that is the case, folks. It is a pedophile epidemic. The Congresswoman is exposing it. This is really coming out, and these are abusers. And they're not all pedophiles. Some of them like good-looking women. I got one in Las Vegas who clearly like men. I mean, it is disgusting. It is Central Texas. Central Texas, my friends, thank you so much for joining us on this Sunday edition, 17th of June, 2012. I want to play a promo that ran a few months ago. I played part of this earlier in the week, but I want to play it all end to end right now. of a UN conference put on in Moscow 2 months ago, and Ray Kurzweil was there. And they just openly announced world government, the end of humanity as we know it, merging with technology. I just want to point out that all of this technology is being piggybacked with back doors of control. And that most autopsies they do now, they find nanotech in people's brains that is in processed foods. I mean, this is crazy. I saw an article on Friday in the French news agency where again, the baby formula being shipped all over the world from China has mercury in it, not just melamine. And what is the response to the FDA? Look this up. They go, well, melamine's not bad for you. No, it just kills you. It causes organ failure. And, hey, mercury is good for your brain. I mean, I got local CBS News saying mercury's good for your brain on tape. I've played it here before. This is Twilight Zone. The globalists are deciding to take control of our evolutionary development. I thought you might want to have a choice or at least a debate about that. I know it's not as important as Dancing with the Stars or acting cool in front of, your neighbors. I mean, I do it too. But we've got to get out of this shallow Madison Avenue mode if we're ever going to have any basic freedom in this society. So here is the utopia offered by the UN as they chart this course. And what's crazy is it's not a utopia, it's a dystopia, and they know it full well. So here it is, Transhumanism 2045.
The world is on the verge of global change. The speed of data transmission has increased by multiples of millions. The rate of globally significant events and that of discoveries and crises is growing exponentially. Our civilization is like an uncaptained ship sailing on rough seas with neither chart nor compass, all the while moving faster and faster. The time we have to make the right decisions is shorter and shorter. We are facing the choice to fall into a new dark age, into affliction and degradation, or to find a new model for human development and create not simply a new civilization, but a new mankind. Historic crises show that to break the deadlock, we need technological revolution. It is clear that today's revolution will also require the deepest social transformation. The world's community and leaders should encourage mankind, instead of wasting resources on solving momentary problems. To focus on the technologies of the future: nanotechnology, biotechnology, information technology, cognitive technology, genetics, and robotics. Doing so will allow us to find new sources of energy, create fundamentally new architecture and transportation, allow unprecedented developments of human cognitive abilities, refine artificial intelligences and brain-computer interfaces, simulate complex systems, create humanoid robots and cyborgs, and with the help of nanorobots, we may develop manageable matter. Find ways to transfer one's personality to an artificial carrier. Yet what we need is not just another technological revolution, but a new civilizational paradigm. We need new philosophy and ideology, new ethics, new culture and new psychology, and even new metaphysics. We must reset our limits, go beyond ourselves, beyond the Earth, and beyond the solar system. This is an adequate response to the challenges of our time. Thus, new reality and future man will arise. Could it happen spontaneously, by itself? Unlikely. Humanity does not have a master plan of its development. It seeks stability. It lives in the present and does not plan. It preserves the status quo and tries to escape development. It does not tend to map future centuries and take responsibility for evolution. In consumer society's culture, there is no evolutionary vocabulary and rhetoric. To break the deadlock, the Russia 2045 movement was founded. It is a mega project intended to reach new heights and meanings. We intend to create a new vector for civilization, aimed at constant human development and evolution. As happened with the mega projects of the last century, the nuclear and the space programs, we integrate the latest discoveries and developments from the sciences: physics, energetics, aeronautics, bioengineering, nanotechnology, neurology, cybernetics, cognitive science. May everlasting spiritual ideals and values help us avoid going astray. Our project will give new meanings to the millions of people on Earth, will become a result of their joint creativity, and will lead us out of the impasse. Away from the murder of nature and physical death, forward to the realm of freedom and creativity, to the depths of the ocean and to the stars, to the infinite universe of our inner world. Our forecast for the next 40 years. February 2012. Global Future 2045 Congress is held in Moscow. It is a debate platform for discussion of our civilization's prospects for development. 2012 to 2013, the global economic and social crises are exacerbated. The debates on the global paradigm of future development intensifies. New transhumanist movements and parties emerge. Russia 2045 transforms into World 2045. Simultaneously, the 2045.com international social network for open innovation is expanding. Here, anyone interested may propose a project, take part in working on it, or fund it, or both. In the network, there are scientists, scholars, researchers, financiers, and managers. 2013 to 2014. New centers working on cybernetic technologies for the development of radical life extension rise. The race for immortality starts. 2015 to 2020. The Avatar is created. A robotic human copy controlled by thought via brain-computer interface. It becomes as popular as a car. In Russia and in the world appear, in testing mode, several breakthrough projects. Android robots to replace people in manufacturing tasks. Android robot servants for every home. Thought-controlled avatars to provide telepresence in any place of the world and abolish the need for business trips. Flying cars. Thought-driven mobile communications built into the body or sprayed onto the skin. 2020 to 2025. An autonomous system providing life support for the brain and allowing it interaction with the environment is created. The brain is transplanted into an Avatar B. With Avatar B, man receives new, expanded life. 2025. The new generation of avatars provides complete transmission of sensations from all 5 sensory robot organs to the operator. 2030 to 2035. Rebrain. The colossal project of brain reverse engineering is implemented. World science comes very close to understanding the principles of consciousness. 2035. The first successful attempt to transfer one's personality to an alternative carrier. The epoch of cybernetic immortality begins. 2040 to 2050. Bodies made of nanorobots that can take any shape arise alongside hologram bodies. 2045 to 2050. Drastic changes in social structure and in scientific and technological development. All the prerequisites for space expansion are established. For the man of the future, war and violence are unacceptable. The main priority of his development is spiritual self-improvement. A new era dawns. The era of neo-humanity.
Do you know what transhumanism is? It's got a lot of camp followers that don't really know. Aldous Huxley, Julian Huxley's brother who ran the UN at UNESCO in the 50s, said that Hitler had made eugenics look bad. And so they made the decision to call it transhumanism. It's basically the total enslavement of humanity dressed up as trendy and cool. Well, that's it for this Sunday transmission. See you back live tomorrow, 11 a.m. Central, and at Infowars.com. God bless you all.